Thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm Don Ma. The U.S. government has disabled a pervasive Chinese hacking network, and it was accused of targeting critical infrastructure, according to sources familiar with the matter. Security officials told Reuters that the U.S. government recently launched an operation to fight the hacking group called Volt Typhoon, who had successfully compromised thousands of internet-connected devices. And the sources are saying that the Justice Department and the FBI were authorized to remotely disable aspects of Volt Typhoon, who had expanded its operations actually late last year. And intelligence officials especially were alarmed by the group targeting critical infrastructure, including naval ports, internet service providers, and utilities. And now onto markets. The tech-heavy Nasdaq lost ground on Tuesday. This is as the market awaited a slew of high-profile corporate earnings, and the Federal Reserve convened for its monetary policy meeting. Here's a quick recap of markets.
The Nasdaq lost ground on Tuesday as the market awaited a spate of corporate earnings from high-profile tech giants, and the Federal Reserve began its two-day monetary policy meeting. The Dow gained more than 0.3%, the S&P 500 finished essentially flat, and the Nasdaq shed 0.75%. Shares of Microsoft, which closed down marginally, jumped briefly in after-hours trading before reversing course after the company beat Wall Street estimates for second quarter revenue. Shares of Alphabet, down more than 1% at the close, slid further after the bell as the Google parent reported fourth quarter advertising revenue below Wall Street expectations. Other members of the Magnificent Seven report later in the week. They include Amazon, Meta Platforms, and Apple, the last of which, along with Tesla, may no longer qualify for the elite group, says Jim Worden, Chief Investment Officer at the Wealth Consulting Group.
I would narrow that down a little bit more, call it the Fab Five, maybe remove Tesla and Apple. Tesla is challenged with China. Apple is challenged with China. I think consumer discretionary as a whole, it may be more challenging as as consumers perhaps slow their spending. We didn't see that a whole lot in the fourth quarter, but some are expecting that, with the higher interest rates and a lot of the liquidity that consumers had has dried up, and they're using more credit.
In other earnings news, shares of UPS slid more than 8% after the package delivery giant issued a disappointing revenue forecast for this year and said it would cut 12,000 jobs. Shares of General Motors jumped nearly 8% after the automaker provided an upbeat 2024 earnings forecast and promised more capital return to shareholders. Ford shares rose 2%. Data from the Labor Department Tuesday showed an unexpected rise in job openings, hinting that the market remains too solid for the Fed to consider cutting its key policy rate as soon as March. The Fed is expected to end its policy meeting on Wednesday, leaving rates unchanged. Its accompanying statement and Fed Chair Jerome Powell's subsequent press conference will be parsed for clues on the timing and number of rate cuts this year.
And a Delaware judge voided Elon Musk's record-breaking $56 billion Tesla pay package on Tuesday, and calling the compensation granted by the EV makers board an unfathomable sum that was unfair to shareholders. Take a look at the details.
A Delaware judge nullified Elon Musk's record-breaking Tesla pay package on Tuesday, calling the CEO's $56 billion compensation unfathomable. The judge concluded that the board who granted it failed to act in the best interest of shareholders. The Court of Chancery's Kathleen McCormick said the pay plan was negotiated by directors who had extensive ties with their headline-making CEO and appeared beholden to him. She said, quote, Musk launched a self-driving process, recalibrating the speed and direction along the way as he saw fit. The process arrived at an unfair price. During the week-long trial, Tesla directors argued that the company was paying to ensure one of the world's most dynamic entrepreneurs dedicated his attention to the electric vehicle maker. One director told the court it led to the company's extraordinary success. The pay package does not guarantee Musk a salary. It grants stock option awards, allowing him to buy heavily discounted Tesla stock as financial and operational goals are met. The case was brought by a small Tesla shareholder, Richard Tornetta. His lawyers argued the board never told investors that the goals were easier to achieve than the company was acknowledging. They also said the board had a duty to require Musk to work full-time at Tesla instead of letting him focus on other companies like SpaceX and X. Ruling in favor of Tornetta, the judge said, quote, swept up by the rhetoric of all upside or perhaps starry-eyed by Musk's superstar appeal, the board never asked the $55.8 billion question, was the plan even necessary for Tesla to retain Musk and achieve its goals? Shares of Tesla dropped in extended trade. Late on Tuesday, Musk responded in a post on X saying, never incorporate your company in the state of Delaware. He then launched a poll asking his followers if he should move Tesla's incorporation to Texas, where its headquarters is physically located. Musk's lawyer did not immediately respond to a request for comment, while Tornetta's attorney said in an email, "Good day for the good guys." The ruling can be appealed to the Delaware Supreme Court.
An H&M CEO unexpectedly quit today. This is as the Swedish fashion retailer struggles to boost sales and profitability. Here's the report.
H&M's CEO surprised the fashion world on Wednesday by quitting her job. Helena Helmersson said she was leaving the firm after 4 years and did not have the energy to continue. Company veteran Daniel Över took over with immediate effect. Shares in the Swedish fashion retailer dropped over 10% on the update. The leadership change comes while the firm struggles to boost sales and profitability. H&M said sales for December and January fell by 4% compared to the previous year. That was a bad sign for the key Christmas shopping period. Fourth quarter operating profit reached $415.4 million. It was up from a year ago, but below analyst projections. H&M has struggled to compete with Inditex-owned Zara and fast fashion giant Shein. Both rivals have seen strong sales growth. H&M has focused on profitability rather than sales volumes recently, as it aims to reach a 10% operating margin this year. New boss Över is 42 and has been at H&M for 18 years, most recently as head of the retailer's core H&M brand.
UPS is planning to cut 12,000 jobs. This is a move that the company said on Tuesday would save it $1 billion. And of course, this as it tries to cut costs after a difficult and disappointing year. Here's more.
Coming off what it called a difficult and disappointing year, UPS announced it's cutting 12,000 jobs. On its earnings conference call Tuesday, UPS said the move would help save the company $1 billion. The world's largest parcel delivery firm is in part being squeezed by higher labor costs from its new contract with the Teamsters Union, which was ratified in August after contentious negotiations. UPS also warned of declining daily volume, which it expects will be weak in the first half of the year before recovering in the latter half. But even then, growth will be constrained. The delivery giant said volume, revenue, and operating profit declined last quarter for all its business segments. It also forecast revenue for this year that was below estimates. That sent shares down nearly 8% in Tuesday morning trading. But UPS, which is viewed as a bellwether for the global economy, did say business conditions would improve in the second half of the year. It also said it's been winning back business that went to rivals like FedEx during the company's tumultuous labor talks.
An unexpected rise last month in jobs. And this potentially is another sign that the U.S. job market remains resilient. The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates just over 9 million job openings in December. This is up from November. And the bulk of the gains were in the private sector, with notable increases in manufacturing, retail, trade, healthcare, and financial sectors. Layoffs increased, though, up from the month before, but still well below pre-pandemic averages. And as for people quitting, that number was the lowest in nearly 3 years. The latest data suggests that the labor market likely remains too strong for the Federal Reserve to start cutting interest rates in the first quarter. And the Japanese steel company taking over U.S. Steel is getting $16 billion worth of loans for the acquisition. Nippon Steel says it has received a commitment letter from 3 Japanese mega banks on the condition that the deal clears. The acquisition has drawn criticism from Democratic and Republican lawmakers, as well as the United Steelworkers Union. And according to a Bloomberg report, Nippon Steel is expected to issue bonds and new shares to raise money after the acquisition and pay back the loans in a year, though no comment from Nippon Steel or the 3 banks. Meanwhile, global momentum for electric vehicles is stalling potentially. Technology and production has outpaced demand, putting pressure on companies to cut costs. Companies are responding to a near-term slowdown. A portfolio manager says there's no doubt buyers are hesitant over EVs' limitations on charging and vulnerability in cold weather. A near-term global slowdown forced car makers to cut production, reduce staff as well. Some have scrapped an initial public offering, and several have had to file for bankruptcy. Automakers are still optimistic, though, for the future forecast demand for electric vehicles. Margins for big consumer goods companies could be lower in the coming quarter as consumers pull back on spending. Procter & Gamble, Colgate, and Kimberly-Clark have all flagged softer sales volumes in the last quarter. An economist says consumers seem to be experiencing inflation fatigue and are choosing to trade down instead of paying for brand name, especially with pandemic-era savings depleting and wage growth slowing. Last year, P&G saw a 7% rise in average sales in January. By the end of that year, the number was less than half. Companies will be looking for ways to control costs this year if reduced sales continue. And the IMF has lifted its global growth forecast and upgraded outlooks for the world's 2 largest economies. The International Monetary Fund edged the 2024 global growth a bit from its October forecast to just over 3%. The U.S. got one of the biggest improvements with its GDP, up by more than 0.5%. China also got an upward revision to 4.6%. The IMF said the improved outlook was supported by stronger spending, increased labor force, mended supply chains, and cheaper energy and commodity prices. The IMF says a soft landing is in sight, but warned that overall growth and global trade is still low and risks remain. Of course, including geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and Red Sea attacks. From the Fed's first meeting of the year to economic data from China, these are the business and finance stories to watch out for in the days ahead. Here's more.
The Fed is expected to leave rates unchanged at its end of January meeting. Signs that it might hold rates higher for slightly longer could give a tailwind to some of the moves the rates rethink has unleashed, such as a rebound in Treasury yields and the dollar. Markets will watch the U.S. Treasury's announcements on Monday and Wednesday. The U.S. non-farm payrolls report is out on Friday. The Bank of England is expected to keep rates steady on Thursday, but signal rates may not stay at their 16-year high for much longer. The pound has done well out of expectations the BOE might move more slowly on rate cuts than the Fed. Investors are also wary ahead of the ruling Conservatives' March budget. Cutting taxes too generously could hurt sterling. The release of China's official PMI data on Wednesday could bolster the case that some serious repair work is needed on the world's second biggest economy. While China narrowly surpassed last year's 5% growth target, analysts are skeptical that trend can be sustained. PMI figures from elsewhere in the region, South Korea, Thailand, and India also scattered the data calendar. Reports are due from Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta platforms, 5 of the Magnificent 7 stocks that helped lift the S&P 500 to a new record high in January. Those results will be crucial in determining whether the index can maintain its momentum. According to LSEG data, S&P 500 companies are on track to post a 4.5% rise in Q4 earnings compared to the year-ago period. Markets are focused on whether corporate earnings will indeed be rosier in 2024.
Apple faces strong action if changes to its App Store do not meet incoming European Union regulations. This is according to the blog's industry chief on Friday. Here's more.
Apple will face strong action if changes to its App Store don't meet incoming European Union regulations. That's according to the blog's industry chief, Thierry Breton, who gave an exclusive interview to Reuters on Friday. From March, the tech giant will allow software developers to distribute their apps on Apple devices via alternative app stores in order to comply with the EU's new Digital Markets Act. Developers can also opt out of using Apple's in-payment system, which charges commissions of up to 30%. But critics have said the changes don't go far enough. They've argued that Apple's fee structure remains unfair and that the changes could be in violation of the DMA. Under Apple's new EU regime, developers will still have to submit apps to Apple for review for cybersecurity risks and obvious fraud. Apple device users in the EU will be able to choose their default web browsers and contactless payments apps. This means they could make contactless payments without using the Apple Pay system. But even if developers opt not to use Apple's App Store or payment system, they will still be required to pay a yearly core technology fee of around 50 cents per user account per year. However, Apple said on Friday the core technology fee only applies to developers who choose to opt into the new business terms. Under the new business terms for EU apps, the tech firm estimates that 99% of developers would reduce or maintain the fees they owe to Apple. Apple did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A spokesperson for the European Commission said, "We take note of Apple's announcements ahead of the compliance deadline on the 7th of March. We do not comment on these announcements."
Now let's talk a little bit about gas prices in California. Multiple factors are adding up for Californians who consistently pay more at the pump, it seems like. Right now, the average gas price is about $4.50 in the Golden State compared to about $3 across the nation. And this is according to AAA. To start, California has its own specific blend of fuel that emits fewer greenhouse gases when burned. This is in part because of decades of battling poor air quality. That also led Californians to also have strict environmental standards for refineries, which led to a reduced number of refineries. Now, on top of limited supply options, California also paid double the taxes on gas, and all this is adding up to Californians paying for more gas compared to many other states. The Federal Reserve and the Bank of England are up next to hold their first meeting of the year after the European Central Bank and Bank of Japan wrapped up theirs. During the January 30th and 31st meeting, the Fed is expected to leave rates unchanged. Investors still believe cuts are coming this year, but less convinced now that it will be in the first quarter. The Bank of England is also expected to keep rates steady during the February 1st meeting. And the pound is up around 5% against the dollar in 3 months. The gain comes from expectations that the Bank of England might move more slowly than the Fed on rate cuts. And within weeks, top semiconductor companies could be awarded billions in subsidies to advance the industry in the U.S., according to a report from the Wall Street Journal. The article said that the money would be to help build new factories in the U.S. to manufacture semiconductors to power smartphones, AI, and more. The journal noted a couple likely recipients, including Intel and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. Both, by the way, have multi-billion-dollar projects underway in Arizona and other states. The article said that the Biden administration is expected to make the announcement ahead of his State of the Union address in early March. And now we know the team's headed to Super Bowl 58. The Kansas City Chiefs will take on the San Francisco 49ers in Las Vegas on Sunday, February 11th. The last time those two teams faced off in the Super Bowl was in 2019 when the Chiefs won. This year's big game is already proving to be one of the most expensive. Here's some reasons why prices are soaring.
Super Bowl 58 is set. The San Francisco 49ers taking on defending Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs.
At the end of the day, we want to compete. We want to go out there and win.
49er fans ecstatic following Sunday's nail-biter win over the Detroit Lions.
It was incredible. I got a little nervous in the first half.
It was awesome. Instant classic for sure.
Fan enthusiasm soaring, and so are ticket prices. As of Monday morning, the get-in price was $8,188, which is 51% more expensive than the get-in price for the Super Bowl this time last year. According to StubHub, the most expensive ticket listed is more than $85,000 and includes a VIP package. With the Super Bowl being hosted in Las Vegas, that too could drive up prices since it's a major tourist destination. And there's no denying that Taylor Swift's presence at this year's big game will also impact the prices as she cheers on her boyfriend, Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce.
You gotta fight for your right to party!
The singer has already helped break NFL viewership records. Last week's playoff game between the Chiefs and the Bills was the most watched divisional playoff game in history. Airlines are also seizing on the hype. American Airlines and United both adding special flights between Kansas City and Las Vegas with special flight numbers like 1989, a nod to the year Swift was born and her most popular album.
And thank you for joining me here on NTD Business. That's all the stories we have. Thank you for watching. See you soon.